There is little debate among observers of contemporary civilization that we are living in an age that combines the clinical features of pathological narcissism with the unfortunate clinical aspects of borderline personality organization. This age is globalized. These sentences apply equally to China, to Russia, to the United States, to Israel, to Turkey, to Hungary, to Australia. It is wrong to say that some cultures and societies are immune to these impacts. They are sweeping, they're inexorable, and they permeate and pervade every aspect of our lives. We have constructed a civilization that is both global and utterly pathological. Not only pathological, but pathogenic in the sense that it fosters and engenders mental illness in the individuals that are exposed to these civilizations, that are subjected to it, and that ultimately participate in it as its components and ingredients. Today we're going to discuss the narcissistic and borderline features of our postmodern civilization, and we're going to limit ourselves to one or two elements. I have much longer and more detailed exposés of the very same topic in the Contemporary Civilization playlist on this channel. Plus, if you want to learn more about the construct of identity and how it is connected to various aspects such as memories and so on, please go to the description. There are 3 links in the description, links to 3 videos, and I recommend that you watch them if issues of identity concern you. The identity crisis of Western postmodern civilization. My name is Sam Vaknin. I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, and I'm a professor of psychology. I propose that contemporary civilization, postmodern civilization, our age, the times we live in, is constructed on 3 elements: fluidity, puerility, and ahistoricity. Now, to explain each of these concepts, fluidity simply means that there is no constancy in the parameters and dimensions and aspects and elements that characterize anything, any single thing. Puerility is the tendency to behave and think as adolescents, as teenagers. So we have the concept of puer aeternus or puella aeterna in psychology, the eternal adolescent, male or female. And finally, ahistoricity simply means that every day is a new day, there's no past, or the past is derided and rejected or reframed or rewritten or ignored altogether. Aversion to the past. It's a kind of malignant mindfulness, if you wish, being embedded in the present to the exclusion of the past. Ahistoricity simply implies that we are self-creating, self-generating. We are not the outcomes of anything or anyone that has preceded us. We emerge whole and complete, and we are the agents of our own formation and our own creation. We are our own gods. This harks back to Nietzsche, of course, and much further to the Renaissance. Okay. There's no dispute that fluidity is a core feature, core philosophical construct or dimension in modern civilization. Gender is fluid. Even sex, which supposedly is biologically determined, is becoming fluid. We regard social, sexual, behavioral scripts as completely fluid, not context dependent, but fluid in the sense that we are in charge. We negotiate our behaviors. We negotiate a consensus each and every time. There's nothing dictated by society or anyone outside us. Roles, including gender roles, are fluid, and even age is fluid. 60 is the new 40, etc., etc. This fluidity, this constant flux, this indeterminacy, this uncertainty, this propensity for reinvention by controlling the narrative, rewriting ourselves at any given moment. This constant reactivity to changing internal circumstances rather than external ones. This fluidity is a core feature of our civilization, and it is coupled with puerility. Puerility, the tendency to act as or think as an adolescent. Puerility, of course, is fluid by definition. Adolescence is the most fluid period in human personal development, in the life trajectory, in the lifespan. We become most in flux in early childhood and then in adolescence. So fluidity and puerility are two sides of the same coin. And both of them involve ahistoricity. If you're fluid, your past is irrelevant because you can define yourself at any given moment or redefine yourself at any given moment. If you're an adolescent, if you're puerile puerile in your thinking, puerile in your composure, puerile in your comport and behavior, if you're puerile, then you're constantly in flux. You're exploring yourself. You're discovering who you are at any given moment. And your answers at any given moment don't have to be consistent with your previous answers or with your future answers. Fluidity is just another name for puerility, and puerility is an aspect of fluidity. And both of them involve ahistoricity, no history. Narcissism, pathological narcissism, is ahistorical because it involves dissociation. Identity is the epiphenomenon, is emergent from memories. There's no identity without memories. There's an open question whether there could be memories without identity, but there's no question that there's no identity without memories. If the process of creating long-term memories is disrupted via, for example, dissociation as a defense mechanism, and memory gaps and confabulations that are trying to bridge in an attempt to bridge these memory gaps, if the whole memory apparatus, the whole memory machinery is compromised, then of course identity will not emerge. There would be a state of fragmented identity, no core identity, no organizing principles, no explanatory hermeneutic principles. There would be what we call identity diffusion. Because all narcissists and all borderlines suffer from dissociation, because all of them have compromised memories and impaired reality testing, narcissists are ahistorical. They wake up in the morning and they are fresh, they are new. Nothing to do with yesterday, nothing to do with the year before. Narcissists have no sense of personal continuity and contiguity. They are disjointed. Pathological narcissism involves constant self-creation and self-recreation, constant reincarnation in vivo, constant reinvention, and the defiance that goes with it. I'm unique. I'm special. I have the capacity not only to mold myself, not only to shapeshift, but I'm my own creator. I'm therefore godlike. Borderline is very similar, but without much of this this particular element of grandiosity. But borderlines are the same, because both narcissists and borderlines suffer from identity diffusion. In this sense, borderlines and narcissists are constantly in flux. They're constantly fluid. And because they cannot settle on a single core identity which would be lifelong, which would afford a sense of continuity, and consequently personal responsibility and accountability, the ability to plan for the future, the ability to recall the past, they have none of this. That renders them eternal adolescents, puerile, puera eternus, puella eterna. And they are ahistorical. There's no history there. That is why narcissists are shocked when they are held accountable for their actions. The consequences of their actions are alien to them because they don't maintain a sense of continuity with who they were a year ago. If they have committed a crime a few years ago, they would be devastated and indignant that they're being punished now, because it's not the same person. And there's no shared history. And the dissociation is huge. There are no memories, and consequently, no identity to bridge all these, past, present, and future. Narcissism and borderline are ahistorical. Fluidity, puerility, ahistoricity. The core features, core structural elements of modern civilization are all key clinical aspects of pathological narcissism and borderline personality disorder. I keep mentioning identity diffusion. Identity diffusion is a lack of stability or focus in how one sees oneself, in what we call self-concept. The elements of the individual's identity are constantly in flux, constantly shapeshift, constantly transmogrified and transformed. As I said, this is very common in borderline personality disorder, but also in narcissism. Erik Erikson, in his Ego Psychology, suggested that this is the possible outcome of what he called the identity versus identity confusion stage. The individual emerges with an uncertain sense of identity and confusion about who they are, their dreams, their wishes, attitudes, goals, values, beliefs, priorities, preferences. None of it is certain. None of it feels real. None of it is owned by the individual. The individual doesn't regard any of these as attributes. It feels external, imported, something that is emanating from the outside, and therefore the narcissist and the borderline are estranged. Estrangement is a key feature of modern civilization. People feel, as Marx had observed, people feel alienated. They feel divorced, not only from reality, not only from others, but from themselves. And this leads, on the one hand, to atomization and alienation, urban alienation and so on. But on the other hand, it leads to mental illness. It's a great definition of mental illness: being divorced from yourself, being alien to yourself, being estranged from yourself. There's daylight between you and yourself. You're not fully invested, affected. There's no psychic energy in your self-concept. It appears to be fiction, narrative, a script, a movie, not really you. You're not living your life. You're living a story that someone has written. That someone might have been you, but you have nothing in common with that person. There's no continuity. Identity versus identity confusion is a phase, in the fifth phase, in Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development. And it is also known as identity versus role confusion. It is an identity crisis, and it occurs during adolescence. During this stage, the individual experiences what Erikson called a psychosocial moratorium, a period of time that permits experimentation with social roles. The individual is this one day and something completely different the next day. And the roles could be mutually exclusive. The shifts in beliefs, in values, and is disorienting, is vertiginous. It's very difficult to follow, and very difficult to regard the adolescent as a single individual, as a personality. The individual tries on different roles and identities with different groups before forming a cohesive, positive identity that allows the individual to contribute to society. So the individual may identify with sometimes outgroups, and this forms negative identity. So the individual may identify with extremist groups or radical groups, or which exclude other people. And by exclusion, there's negative identity formation. At any rate, be that as it may, whatever solution the adolescent chooses, it's never permanent, it's ever shifting, the switching is common, and they're very confused about their sense of identity. And this is the typical condition of modern civilization, where adults actually suffer identity confusion. where adults are in the throes of what is known as an identity crisis. Originally in psychology, we suggested that identity crisis is a phase of life marked by experimentation, changing, conflicting, or newly emerging values, and a lack of commitment to one's usual roles in society, especially work, family relationships. Again, Erik Erikson claimed that this identity crisis is natural and even desirable in adolescents because they have to go through a period of identity crisis and then emerge from it with a cohesive identity. Greater maturity results from this experience because you're able to discard many roles and identities which are ego dystonic, which are ego incongruent, which you don't feel comfortable with. The concept has been expanded to refer to adult midlife crisis in the 60s and 70s, other periods marked by change and uncertainty. But we are in a situation right now where entire collectives and civilizations and societies and cultures and every single individual in them is grasped, is consumed, is conquered, is invaded by an identity crisis. There are no stable identities anywhere nowadays, nothing to hold on to, no Archimedean point. And this is a major, major problem. There is something known as identity status model. It's an expansion of the identity versus identity confusion fifth stage in Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development. The model was suggested by Canadian psychologist James Marcy. It was in 1966. And the model is this. There are 4 possible identity statuses that an individual might assume, particularly during adolescence. And each one of them is characterized by different levels of exploration and commitment to any specific identity. So ideally, development moves towards identity achievement status. That's a phase, a stage, characterized by evidence of both identity exploration and commitment. This status is related to stable self-esteem, healthy psychological functioning. The other 3 identity statuses are moratorium status, as I've mentioned before. It's characterized by evidence of identity exploration, but a lack of commitment. There's the foreclosure status, depicted by commitment to an identity that adults have set forth for an individual, but failure to explore different options before that commitment is made. So your father tells you you're going to be a medical doctor, you commit yourself to this course of action, but you haven't explored anything else. That would be a foreclosure status. And finally, there's diffusion status, and it's a lack of both identity exploration and commitment. Our modern civilization has eschewed, has given up on identity achievement status, and even to some extent glorified and glamorized the other 3. The moratorium status, the diffusion status, and even the foreclosure status. We eulogize, we glamorize, we glorify people who followed the footsteps of their parents and created a dynasty. And we tell young people and older people, age-indifferent advice that they should always explore and they should never commit too much to anything. And so this is really bad because the messaging in modern society is that commitment is suffocation, commitment is prison. Exploration is a great thing, a good thing, indefinitely, throughout the lifespan. Fluidity becomes not only an observational factor, but a value. The new value system in modern societies is you need to be fluid. It's good to be puerile or even childish. The inner child is, a great thing. And it's not too good to dwell on history, to dwell on the past. You need to be mindful. You need to be grounded in the present. The past can't teach you much because the rate of change is so enormous. You've got very little. There's very little to learn from the past. You need to be a bit narcissistic. You need to be a bit selfish. You need to put yourself first. You need to forget things and forgive things. You need to self-create all the time, reinvent yourself. And it's good to be defiant and contumacious, reject authority. It makes you unique to some extent. These are the values communicated by modern civilization. Regrettably, in psychology, we regard all these things past adolescence as pathologies. Anyone, any individual with all these features who is older than 25 years old is mentally ill. And so, to a large extent, is the civilization we live in.